Good. And we got a whole bunch of.
To record it, Abe's here.
No, but other people. He just asked me to record it, actually. You got a bunch of
Oh,
people
because he
here.
has to leave.
Okay. Okay, whenever you're ready.
All right, first of all, thank you to Honey for suggesting that we do a shiur on my father's yard site, so it's very meaningful. In lieu of the Rosh Chodesh shiur is coming up, since Rosh Chodesh is on Shabbos. What? Oh, well.
There's a noise beyond here.
Right, so again, thank you to Honey for suggesting that we do this on the yard site, so I can really honor my father in the most appropriate way, and thank you to everybody coming, so we can have our yard site shiur. Second. Okay, today's will be a little bit different. Usually I do halacha, but we're going to do a chumash shiur today. One of the things that really excites me, I don't lead a very exciting life, but one of the things that excites me is a new take or a new description of something that I've been used to for so many years. You know, I mean, we every year and every given Shabbos we read the same parsha year after year after year. So after a while, we start taking the stories that we know very, very well for granted because we know it very, very well. So I try every year to get a new book on Chumash and read it. I would strongly recommend, if you want, it's called Dimensions in Chumash by a Rav Emanuel Bernstein, who is a fantastic thinker and very creative, out-of-the-box thinker and very good writer. He's a British rabbi who now lives in Yerushalayim and has written many books on the holidays and the Parsha. And this description of the crossing of the Red Sea, which we all know very, very well, is not his thoughts, but he writes it very well. It's from a sefer called Maaseh Hashem, written by a Rav Eliezer Ashkenazi in the 1500s, who is also a very, very creative thinker who wrote a book on Chumash and on the Haggadah. And what excited me about this is, one, that it's a totally different take, and two, it's very much based on the words in the psukim. It's very textually based. So we've read this many, many times, but he really pays attention to the words. He doesn't gloss over them. And so I found it very interesting. So we'll go through it. So please follow along in the text because it's very text-based. So first of all, you have a picture in the top left of the Red Sea. The assumption is that Bnei Yisrael crossed at the top left, at the top of the Gulf of Suez, which is part of the Red Sea. And they crossed there, going from left to right, which is going from west to east. Now, the first thing is that Rav Ashkenazi says that we're dealing here with two armies. One is what I called A, which is Paro's personal guard, a few hundred soldiers, like his top soldiers or officers, and then the huge Egyptian army. He based this because if you look at Pasuk, look at Pasuk 8, right? It says Hashem hardened his heart, then Vayodof acharei bnei Yisrael, right? And then in Pasuk 9 it says Vayodefu Mitzrayim. That seems to be repetitious. Vayodof, why repeat it? And he says that whenever it says Paro and his army, it refers to his royal guard, his personal guard. When it says Mitzrayim, it represents the very large, hundreds of thousands of soldiers, the whole Egyptian army. The way he explains it is if you look at Pasuk 3, the first one, V'amar Paro l'bnei Yisrael nevuchim hein ba'aretz. So the Israel leave. Paro sent a spy or spies to see how Bnei Yisrael are doing. He didn't send it with a happy heart because he was losing a whole slave labor. And the reports came back that Bnei Yisrael were lost and they were confused. Why? And this was done on purpose because there is a description there of all their going from place to place. So they went from place A to B, and then they went back to place A. So when you do that, it seems like they're confused. They're not going. And he thought that they're right for the picking. So Paro took his royal guard. That's his, right? Where it says, he took his select chariots and riders and figured that they're in a panic. They're lost because they didn't know what they were bargaining for going into the desert, right? And obviously he didn't believe that their God would protect them. So he said, I'm going to go get them. But what happens if you look at Pasuk 8, so he chases after them. I don't need many. I just need my royal guard and I'll get them. But then he sees Bnei Yisrael yotzim b'yad Ramah. He sees Bnei Yisrael are walking. Yad Ramah is with a victorious, confident. This is not a people who are panicking. This is not a people who are confused. So he says, I'm not going to be able to take them on. Remember, Bnei Yisrael are marching is 2-3 million people. The Torah tells us there were 600,000 men between the age of 20 and 60. He has a few hundred soldiers. So he says, I'm not going to be able to do this. So he sends back messengers. I want the whole Egyptian army. Okay? So what you have now, right, when you look at picture 1, I should have asked Honey to draw these. I'm sorry, but I drew these, so, okay, whatever. So if you look at picture 1, I want you to, in your mind, picture the setup that you have, especially with the picture in the top left, right? So you have the Red Sea. By the way, it's not so clear why it's called the Red Sea. The leading theory is that there's a lot of algae in the Red Sea, and these are special type of algae that when they die, they emit some reddish color, and the sea takes on a reddish hue. So I don't know if that's true or something made this up, but it's interesting because it's really Yam Suf, Sea of Reeds. I always thought that some printer once made an error and dropped an E. So it went from Sea of Reeds to the Red Sea, whatever. But I don't think that's true. That's just Chumash humor. But whatever. So what you have is going from west to east, right? On the west bank, you have Bnei Israel. Behind them is Paro's royal guard. And behind him is the Egyptian army, right? That's how you have B-A, Beis Yud is Bnei Yisrael. So the mission, God's mission, which you know that when God has a mission, he's gonna actualize it. God's mission was that Bnei Yisrael should cross and come out on the eastern side. A, Paro's royal guard, who were the real bad guys. They deserve to be punished. They were all going to be drowned. Lo nisha bahem ad echad. Not one is going to remain. B, which is hundreds of thousands of Egyptian soldiers, not all of them were evil. They're in the army. Not all of them, by evil I mean against the Jews. Some of them were evil and had to be killed, but the majority did not have to be killed. Okay? So that's God's mission. Now let's look at some of the questions that Ashkenazi has that lead him to come up with a very, very interesting, I think, fascinating scenario. If you look at Pasuk 21 and pay attention to the words. So this is when it begins to happen, when the crossing begins to happen. Vayet Moshe es yado al hayam, right? Moshe stretches his hand over the sea. Vayolech Hashem es hayam. Now, vayolech, the word is vayolech is from lalech, is to go. Vayolach means to move, to transport, to take. So Hashem took the sea. What does that mean? Hashem took the sea. Beruach kadim azak kol halayla, with an eastern wind. An eastern wind means that it comes from the east. So this is a wind that Hashem, we had this before with the arbe. The locust was brought also by an eastern wind. But here, so he's going from, this wind is going from east to west, right to left. He took the sea with an eastern wind. Vayasem es hayam. Now, vayasem means to place, to put. And he put the sea, the charavah. Now, we always have the image that Hashem transformed the sea into dry land, right? By splitting it. But that's not what vayasem means. Vayasem doesn't mean, he could have said, the Torah didn't say vayahafoch. That would be transformed. It doesn't say vayahafoch, it says vayasem. He placed. So now says Rav Ashkenazi, you have the image. He took the sea using an eastern wind. So he's going from east to west, and he placed the sea, meaning the waters, on dry land. That's what the pasuk says, right? And then vayibaku hamayim, and then they split. And this is the gist of his thing. He's saying the waters didn't split in the sea, right? Because you have, right, you see picture one, you have the sea, and then to your left you have the dry land. That's the West Bank. Not the West Bank of now, but the West Bank, right? And you have Bnei Israel, Powers Guard, and the Egyptian army. Now let's move to picture two. Hashem took all the waters from the Red Sea, using the wind, which is under his control, and moved. Vayolech Hashem es hayam, beruach kadim, vayasem es hayam, and he put the sea, the waters, onto the land, right? Onto the West Bank. That's the charavah, that's the dry land. Now, he can't do that and just do just that because Bnei Israel are there. He's going to drown Bnei Israel. He doesn't want to drown the Jews, right? So then, vayibaku hamayim, that's the pasuk. Then he split it. So if you see picture two now, right, the squiggly lines are the water, right? So he moves it from the dry. So now the sea is dry because he took all the water, put it onto the land on the right, on the left side, on the west side. On either side, north and south of Bnei Israel. B and A don't know what's going on because they're in total darkness. The psukim say that Hashem took the pillar of cloud, which was usually in front of Bnei Israel, leading them, and he moved it behind them. And that caused B and A to be in total darkness. So they're not really sure what's going on. Then Rav Ashkenazi has another question, which leads him to the next thing. Look at pasuk 22. Vayavo bnei Yisrael b'soch hayam vayabasha. V'hamayim lahem choma miminam u'mismolam. Bnei Yisrael walked into the sea in dry land, and the water for them were walls to the right and to the left. Now look at pasuk 29. It's the same pasuk. 7 pasukim later, we repeat the pasuk. Torah doesn't do that, but it's not really the same pasuk. If you look, it's a very, very similar. The words are the same, but the order is a little different in the middle. In pasuk 22, it says "B'soch hayam," in the middle of the sea, vayabasha. Pasuk 29. Vayabasha, b'soch hayam. You say, oh, come on. No, it's not come on, right? Meaning the Torah, remember, God wrote the Torah. So every word, not only does every word mean something, but the order of the words means something. So what does that mean? Why in 22, it's b'soch hayam, vayabasha. In pasuk 29, vayabasha, b'soch hayam. I mean, just not to be repetitive, right? It can't be. So Rav Ashkenazi says,
Just want to make sure you're not muted.
Oh. Rav Ashkenazi says, Pasuk 22, Bnei Yisrael is describing picture 2. Bnei Yisrael are besoch hayam. The yam here means water, are within the water by Yabasha, on dry land. That's picture 2. Bnei Yisrael are on the dry land, on the west bank. They haven't moved yet, right? And the water, a miracle happened. The water was split, so it's above them, north of them, and south of them, and they're sitting there. Okay, now let's go to picture 3. Now things begin to happen, meaning as far as people moving. Hashem tells Moshe, stop davening so much and move. So they start moving. They start moving to the east, to the right. Bnei Yisrael go into the dry sea. It's perfectly dry now because all the water had been taken by the east wind from the sea and on the land. So Bnei Yisrael now, as you see, are moving into the dry sea, right? Paro and his royal guard, that's A, they follow. That kind of, they hear movement, because their mission is to go and capture them. So they just follow, and they're walking on dry land. So far, they're not in any trouble. But then they look around, right? And they realize, whoa, we're not on the West Bank anymore. We're in what used to be a sea. It's dry land, but something strange here is happening. This is not a good place to be. Maybe the Jewish God is doing something which will not be good for us. So they try to head back, to head west, right? But the Psukim describe they can't move. The wheels of the chariots all fall off, they describe. So they can't go. They're stuck on the dry land. That's not so bad. Okay, so you're stuck on dry land, right? The Egyptian army is still on the West Bank, but it's not in any trouble because the waters are north and south. They're right in the middle, as you see in picture 3. This picture 3 is verse 29. When it says, Bnei Yisrael are walking al-Chub Yabasha, they're walking on dry land, besoch hayam, within the sea. Here, yam doesn't mean water. Here means the sea. They're walking on dry land in the sea. Okay, so that's 29. You see the difference? Pasuk 22 is picture 2. They're within the water. That's picture 2 on the dry land. That's why it's in that order. Besoch hayam vayabasha. Picture 3 is pasuk 29. They're walking on dry land in the sea. This used to be the Red Sea. Red Sea used to have water. Now the Red Sea is dry because all the water has moved westward. Now look at picture 4. And this is now the action, right? What happens now? The pasuk says, look at pasuk 27. Moshe again stretches his hand over the sea. Vayashav hayam. The sea returns. So we've always explained the sea returns, meaning, because our image had always been that within the Red Sea, the water split, north and south, and they saw walking through. Paro is following them. They saw now here, they're here, and the sea now returns. So he has, again, a whole different take on it. He says, Vayashav hayam, the sea that had been on the west bank on the dry land, now follows Paro, and now is coming back. If you see the squiggly lines all come back now to the right of the bank, to the east of the bank. And a miracle happens. A miracle happens that as the water comes from the west bank into the sea, it pulls with it those soldiers in the Egyptian army who deserve to be killed. So you'll say, that's impossible. That's supernatural. That's right. The miracles are happening. No less than we all accept that in the Oz Yashar, in the description, sometimes it describes the Egyptians as drowning like straw, sometimes like stone, sometimes like lead. Why is it? I mean, it's like poetry. So they say, no, this was a miracle by Hashem because of the Egyptians. Some were really evil, some were kind of moderate, and some were, they got caught up. They're just following orders or something. They're not so evil. Okay. So those who are really evil, they drown like straw, up and down, up and down. They really suffered. It took them an hour to drown, right? But those who were not so evil, they drowned like lead. They went right down within 3 seconds. They drowned, so they never suffered. Okay? So you say, wait, that's impossible. How can the water select? Oh, that was a supernatural miracle. That's the miracle that happened. Hashem was able to do that, right? So no less, Hashem is able here. The Egyptian army, 1 million soldiers are there on the West Bank, on dry land. The water had been split. Now the water comes back into the Red Sea. It pulls with it, it selects the really evil ones in the Egyptian army. So like say 10% of them. And Hashem wanted, that's a pasuk early on, where if you look at pasuk 4, he says, V'ikavda b'faro v'chol chelo v'yadu Mitzrayim ki ani Hashem. Hashem Dafka wanted the whole Egyptian army there because Ikavda means he was glorified. He was honored, from the word kavod. He wanted all of Egypt to see them, to see what was happening to Paro and to his royal guard and to all the evil people. Because they were going to witness it. Their purpose for there to be on the West Bank was not to be killed, but to witness what was happening. So that's why now go back to Pasuk 27. Vayashav ha'am hayam. To its previous strength, the Red Sea kind of refills with the water. Umitzrayim nasim likraso. And the Egyptians, nasim means to run, to flee, are running towards it. Why would you run towards the water? I would run away from the water, right? But that's the point. Rav Ashkenazi in his brilliance says, right, if you go back to picture 3, Paro A is in the sea, which is now dry. But then he realizes, I'm in the sea. This is not a good place to be. I know it's dry now, but I have a feeling it's not going to be dry for very long. So he starts running back to the dry land, to the West Bank. But then the water is just coming this way. So the water is coming eastward, and Paro is trying to run westward. And he's running towards the water. And then, Pasuk 29, that's what we did, right? And then again, Kavches keeps describing what's happening in picture 4. Vayashuvu hamayim, the waters return. Return, what do you mean return? They used to be in the Red Sea, they went to the West Bank, and now they return into the sea. That describes the royal guard. A is killed, everybody's killed. B, I just divided B1 and B2. B2 are the evil soldiers from the Egyptian army. They get killed. They get drawn into the water and they drift. B1 are there just to witness. That's the majority of the Egyptian army who are not evil. And they are there just to witness and see a miraculous event. And then Bnei Yisrael continue to walk eastward, right? While all this is happening in the Red Sea on the west half, on the east half, Bnei Yisrael, and they emerge on the eastern bank. And then you see picture 5 is where B2, the evil ones from the soldiers from the army, A, Paro's royal guard, are all drowning in now the Red Sea has returned. And Bnei Yisrael now are about to emerge on the eastern bank.
It's a question. According to Ashkenazi, I think learned that
the big miracle here, besides happening here, all bodies of
Water,
split
right,
throughout the whole world.
right.
Did they split in the same fashion
So-
like they did here? Or
It's a great question. He doesn't deal with that. I never really understood the purpose of it unless it was just to alert people who are 100 miles away that there's a miracle happen with water splitting. But so, I mean, he doesn't move away from the water splitting. He just has the water splitting, not in the Red Sea, but on the West Bank. But
this explanation is really, there's a lot of theories to this. It said with the winds at the right time, that the water could technically split. You don't need God.
right.
But to say that the miracle went so far to take the water and lift it up from the sea, to take it out and move it.
That's even a bigger miracle, right, than the water splitting.
That's something,
Yep, yeah. That's one powerful God, yeah. Okay, so that's a whole different take. And I got very excited about it because I thought I knew the story very well, and maybe I did, but this is just another version of it, very much based on the words in the psukim. Now, the back side of the page, I thought this was very clever by Rabbi Bernstein, that Zvi Fischer is a symphony in C major. And he has a very interesting point on this. One is, so the first movement is Psukim 1 to 12, which is a very detailed description of the Egyptians drowning. The second movement is Psukim 13 to 16. I quoted here Pasuk 16, which says that the surrounding nations were all very afraid. And then it says, Ad Yavor Amcha Hashem, Ad Yavor Amzu Kanisa. And we're very familiar because we say this every morning. And this is the way Chazal explained, Ad Yavor Amcha Hashem, until your nation crossed the Red Sea. So what's the second one? What's Yavor Amzu Kanisa? Oh, that refers to Bnei Yisrael now 40 years later, crossing the Yarden River into Eretz Yisrael. There was a miracle there also. It wasn't really a split, but the waters of Yarden, as they're flowing from north to south, stopped midway. And then a kind of wall developed. It just stopped and accumulated. The wall developed, and they saw them were able to cross the Yarden on dry land. It's interesting, a repeat of what happened. But why bring in Eretz Yisrael here? Right? There was nothing about Eretz Yisrael when in the Exodus, in Yetzias Mitzrayim. Right? So 7 days later, at the crossing of the Red Sea, they come out on the eastern bank, and now we suddenly have a reference to Ad Yavo Amzu Kanisa. And the reason is, says Rav Bernstein, that if you remember, there was a fifth expression of Geula, Vehevesi. Now we used to the four terms of expressions of Geula because we needed four cups, right? But there is a fifth one, which Vehevesi. But Yetzias Mitzrayim was just the beginning of the redemption. We physically had to get out. It's interesting. There was no song when they got out, right? Az Yashir, the song was 7 days later, right, on the 21st of Nisan, when they got out on the eastern bank. There was a song there. There was no singing when they left. And so that's an interesting thing to think about. But one thing is possible is that the redemption, it was just the beginning. The Exodus was really just the very beginning. You had to physically leave Eretz Mitzrayim. So it wasn't complete. They were still very much, so to speak, in danger because they know that they're going into the desert and maybe Paro will come after them. They weren't really sure they're getting, I mean, they were happy, but it wasn't a total joy yet. Right? Maybe didn't even hit them yet. But now, when they saw the whole Egyptian army drown, or Paro and his royal guard drown, and they're on the eastern bank, and these guys, the Egyptian army is on the west bank, they're separated by a big sea now. Now the joy was complete. But now when they're completely redeemed physically, and they're completely saved, now we can start looking to what's the whole purpose of this? Purpose was not simply to get them out of Mitzrayim, was to become Am Hashem and to receive the Torah a few weeks down the line, and eventually to enter Eretz Yisrael. That was the plan. The plan was Exodus, become Am Hashem, receive the Torah, and enter Eretz Israel. Right? It was all that. So now, in the second movement, so to speak, there is now, we'll bring Am Yavor, Amzu Kanisa, bring the Israel to Eretz Israel, and even that's not the total culmination. The ultimate goal is the third movement, Psukim 17 and 18, right? Teviemo v'sitaemo b'har nachalascha, machon l'shivtecha. Machon is a residence, l'shivtecha, for Hashem you'll dwell, right? You build it, and I will live in it. We're talking about Beis Hamikdash, Mikdash Hashem, Konu Yodecha. So we have now in the last part of the Shiur is now we're entering Eretz Israel, but building a Beis Hamikdash. Something that's fascinating, which is not from Rabbi Bernstein. This I heard on a Rabbi Friend CD, which I think is a very beautiful insight, a very powerful insight, and that is I put in the psukim here the way it appears in the Torah, right? In the Torah, the Shira is written in a very unusual way, as you see, with a lot of spaces, not like usually the Torah is written, right? You have column, right? There's very few gaps, but here there's a lot of spaces. Why is that? So there's some technical sophist reasons, but beautiful reason is because here their joy was unbelievable, right? At seeing the Egyptians get killed, get what they deserve, and we're really free. We've really been saved. There are times in all our lives where there's a joy, right? So I don't mean the joy like when your wife serves you your favorite supper. I mean, your grandson or your granddaughter is in a bar mitzvah, gets married, right? The birth of a child, the birth of a grandchild. I mean, times where it just, the emotion so overwhelms you, you can't express it properly. You're tongue-tied. You get up and you have tears of joy. You have such emotion in you. You say the thank you Hashem and you express some words, but they don't come close to really expressing what's inside you. You can't do it, right? Those are the spaces. In the Shira, the spaces are the feelings and emotions unexpressed. And then you have words. Now, if you actually in the Torah measure the inches or the centimeters of the space is more than the words. Because the emotion in you at this special time was greater, right? It's unexpressible, right? Unless you're like a Jonathan Sachs, who can express anything, right? Any thought or feeling, but us mortals, we can't express such amazing joy. And that was the space. I thought that was beautiful. And I'll leave you the last thing is that Az Yashir. This I think I told you a few years ago, which I think is very powerful. It's grammatically very clumsy because Az means then, in the past. Yashir is will sing in the future. So that's strange. It should have been Az Sharu. Then they crossed, then they sang. What does it mean, Az Yashir? So Rashi deals with that. He deals with this grammatical issue and he gives a reason. But then he says, from here there's a remez to Tchias HaMesim. There's a hint to the resurrection of the dead, whatever that means. Meaning, there's a medrash that says that in Makas Choshech, Jews died, which is an amazing medrash. I mean, it's like so unbelievable. There's only 20% of the Jews left. I mean, that's right. And no, why were they killed? Because they had come very assimilated, and they really were not very keen on leaving Egypt. They had they had a nice job, they had a nice, right? I mean, they were slaves, right? Although the slavery had really ended with the for the year during the Makos. But they didn't really want to leave. Where are we going? To the desert? Oh, that's much better, right? So they were killed. Okay, I've never been comfortable or happy with that medrash that 80% of the people, whatever. But he said, but if you take that medrash, so now only 20% of the people left. Well, they were mourning, right? If 80% leave, your neighbor, your relatives, I mean, The overwhelming majority of the nation is not here. And this was only 5 weeks ago, because Makkos Choshech was, right, number 9, right? So each Makkah was a month. So 5 weeks ago, 80% of the nation died, according to this medrash, right? So Moshe decides this is a good time to sing. So he starts singing, nobody follows, because nobody's in the mood to sing, right? They're still kind of in the mourning period. So Moshe tells them, because the question is, why here Tchias HaMesim? Okay, as Yashir, they will sing, meaning Moshe is telling them, one day we will sing in the future also, meaning at Tchias HaMesim, when you're reunited with your departed relatives. But why here? So Moshe was giving them a kind of a chizuk, a hope, right? When you're down, all you need is a little hope, a glimmer of hope. If there's no hope, you're not going to come out of your depression. He was saying, I know you're very sad and very depressed and very mournful about the 80% that died, but I'm telling you, one day Mashiach is going to come, and then there's going to be Tchias HaMesim. Right? I'm saying words, I don't understand what that means, but there'll be Tchias HaMesim, there'll be the neshamos will be clothed in a body. Again, I have no idea what I'm saying. But that gives you some hope, because you'll be reunited with your departed ones. The 80% left, one day you'll talk to them again. You'll be with them again in some way. So that gave him some hope. They tell the story about the Belzer Rebbe. When he came from the Holocaust, he wanted to rebuild bells in Brooklyn. So it was Pashas B'Shalach, I think the first Shabbos that he had was a shtibel, and people were there, and he saw they were broken people. They'd lost spouses, children, parents, whatever it is, right? So they were broken people. It was not a Laban Minion. So they didn't want to, no tune, nothing. So he got up and he said, so he gave this vort about Moshe trying to pick up the people about Tchias HaMesim. So he said, I know you've lost. I've also lost. But one day you'll be reunited with them. Okay? So it kind of gives you a little bit of a glimmer and a good hope. So that's what Moshe was doing here. So as Yashir, there's a song then, yes, Sharu, and Yashir is the Tchias HaMesim. So I thought that was so appropriate for a yard site, right? Because on a yard site is a day, there's a sadness to it, right? Because on this day, some say on this day, your mazel is not so great, right? Maybe not a good day to to try to ski the slope you've never skied before. Probably not such a good idea, right? Or whatever, or go bungee jumping, because it's not right, because something bad happened on that day. On the other hand, it's a good day kind of to reflect on unique features, right? My father went through the Holocaust, and then he got to Israel, and he fought in 1948 in the War of Independence, fought in 1956 in the Sinai Campaign. So he kind of lived and was an active part of two of the greatest events in the 20th century, the Holocaust and Israel, and was a very, very special person. So Rav Soloveitchik says, why do we have Yizkor on Yom Tov? So Yizkor was sad. You're supposed to cry. I'm supposed to remember my parents and Yizkor. But so why have it on Yom Tov? You're supposed to be happy. So Soloveitchik kind of elaborates on this, that no, Yizkor is not a sad thing. You remember, but you remember all the good things that they did and all the things they taught you and the good things that you're continuing in their ways and kind of the relationship and you start smiling about, oh, we did this together and he taught me that. So you can make it into a good day. So again, I hope you enjoyed this different take on a story that we thought we knew so well, and we did. We knew one version well, and this is another version, and just some of the other insights on Uz Yashir. And again, thank you for coming and let me have a yard site shiur.
Nice you caught.
Thank you.
Very good, very nice.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Next time we'll go back to doing this year.
No, this is very good.
As long as we show me, should have earlier.
Amen. Thank you.